One common thread I do notice in a review for a show like this, commonly people will go, well, this show is much better than a show like Bubble Guppies, for example. And I get very confused because you're comparing apples to oranges, especially with the topic of the video today. And commonly, I notice that we kind of just judge preschooler and younger age content, and we kind of judge them on the fact that they aren't a show that's kind of, let's just give an age range here, 9 years old and up. And I will say this, we do need to have a conversation about preschooler shows and younger in terms of animation, but I think that we should look at the overall quality and not expect a show aimed at an older demographic. I will say this, it's very nice when these shows, I referenced Go Go Corey Carson in a much earlier video. I think that shows a perfect example of having the whole family involved. And it's nice when you get preschooler and younger shows like that. But when you don't have that and the show wants to aim for a younger demographic, I think it's important to look at the show, if it's that, and review it as such. And I think commonly we just kind of exclude these shows mainly because of well-known and controversial shows such as Paw Patrol, Peppa Pig, and Caillou. And I feel like we need to analyze these shows differently and expect what the product is. And if there is, something controversial or something you feel like is not good for the target demographic, I think we need to talk about these things. But I don't think we should loop all of these shows together. And while Littlest Pet Shop 2012 is not a preschooler or younger demographic show, the show is aimed at a younger demographic, I do definitely think that we should be looking at these shows a little bit differently and comparing demographic shows to a much younger show. And that's really all I have to say here. It's not really important to the overall video of this, but I wanted to share that before we jump into the meat potatoes of this video, because in older reviews for MLP and including this show, I noticed that's a common thread.
Watching this show will put you in the know!
I feel like non-cable users are not exactly used to this one. They're probably only used to the little bumper on the corner of the screen saying E/I. But for people who didn't have cable and had to watch PBS Kids and other programming places, they'd be like, this show is educational and informational, and then you would see the EI on the side of the screen. This pretty much means like you'd have shows like, for example, Word World, which teaches children about spelling and how to pronounce words. On the other side of the spectrum, you got It's a Big Big World teaching kids about animals. That's what they mean, but there's a little bit of a loophole with this one.
But you said the rainbow couldn't be fixed anymore.
No, I said you couldn't fix it. You see, the truth can be whatever you want, Poppy, if you're selected.
I don't feel great about that being the lesson of this adventure.
It was fun, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Listen, as long as you got good positive role models for children and it's a slice of life show with the characters looking at the camera and learning a moral at the end of the day, honestly, you can make whatever show you want. Littlest Pet Shop is about a girl named Blythe Baxter moving with her father to the big city, moving to an apartment that's above the Littlest Pet Shop. Once Blythe goes down a dumbwaiter all the way to the pet shop, she can suddenly talk to the animals. After this, the show is pretty much basically a show about Blythe or the pets learning slice of life morals, or sometimes the episodes are just about Blythe or the animals just having fun. The episodes are either divided into a Blythe and human world subplot, and then an animal subplot with the Littlest Pet Shop characters getting their own story, or it's Blythe interacting with one or more of the Littlest Pet Shop characters, and then the other subplot is just with the other part of the Pet Shop pets having their own story, or it's just Blythe and the Pet Shop pets having one singular episode. During this era of Littlest Pet Shop, they also introduced another toy line, which was the Blythe dolls. Hence why the main character, the main human character, is named Blythe Baxter. And because of that, Blythe's whole characterization and the thing that she likes is being a fashion designer. And a huge thing about the dolls that was in Littlest Pet Shop was the sense of customizing the doll character. And they incorporated that into the show, but they also incorporated it into the animation as well. Blythe looks exactly like how the dolls were made to fit Blythe's character in the TV show, and the Littlest Pet Shop characters felt like Littlest Pet Shop characters, but they were a little bit cartoony in design to fit the animation. The interesting thing about the background, and which really makes the show pop and felt unique at the time, was it felt like the background of a design clothing sketchbook. And just the style alone very much set the show apart from the other shows that were going on at the time. And even now, the show looks a little bit different from other shows right now. And honestly, it really made the show pop. Not to mention, it definitely helped the cartoony factor, because sometimes with Blythe and the other human characters, the cartooniness is definitely pushed and exaggerated a bit sometimes, but it's a lot more noticeable on the pets, and it just very much helps the characters very much pop in the universe. So honestly, the animation style is very neat and distinct from a lot of shows going on at the time and shows currently airing right now. Before I jump into the characters, I think it's important to use episode 1 to talk about this, but it's important for this topic and the topics to come after this. But before I jump into anything, let me just tell you, I like that Captain Marvel movie. I enjoy it, flaws and all. I really like it. And I'm not afraid of Brie Larson driving a car. So that's awesome. But Littlest Pet Shop has a lot of female characters. But the awesome thing is there's male characters, not as side characters, but as actual main characters. Now, I will say this. It's important to have male and female characters. I think it's very important to let the storyteller do what they want with gender, race, etc., etc. I think that the storyteller should be able to tell the stories that they want to tell, doing whatever. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be questioning those things. I think that questioning presentation is always important, but that's beside the point and the topic at hand. Sadly, in terms of toy products, because this is what this is, we very much limit to what genders can enjoy which. Boys have to go in the blue aisle, girls have to go into the pink aisle. There can't be a good mix between the two. Or you can't go into that aisle because, hey, stay in your color and stay in your box. And due to that, it very much affects how kids, teens can really approach these shows. And due to that, you just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but for me personally, it was hard for me to kind of enjoy female-centric things. For me growing up, my like favorite characters were like Dora, Kim Possible, the Powerpuff Girls, Raven, Baxter. Like those were like my homegirls right there. But because I was a boy, that was a problem. And because of that, I could still enjoy those shows, but there came a lot of stigma. And if you're a boy, I'm sure you kind of know what that means. Um, and because of that, I was kind of pushed to enjoy boy things when that should have came naturally for me, and that was not the case, and I was just forced to like certain things when I might not enjoy it, or I enjoyed it but it was hard to really fully enjoy it because I was pushed into it. And to be honest, with shows like Littlest Pet Shop, I think the important part about the branding is the pets don't really have a gender unless it's like present. Like if you look at Zoe Trent, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely a girl right there. Um, but in terms of like the other pets that aren't really official characters, you kind of just use your imagination and go wild. And I think that is important as to why we did get the male characters that we did in the show. But in terms of this and DreamWorks Trolls, which is on this list, I think it's very, very important to kind of have a female-centric show that has male characters in the forefront because it does give parents that have that you're blue, you're pink, stay in your lane. I think that when a child watches it and they're kind of questioning, you see Blythe Baxter on screen and they're like, this is a little bit of a girl show, let me change the channel. And then out of nowhere, Russell Ferguson and the rest of his homeboys show up and they're like, is this a boy show? And then you kind of realize, oh, hey, wait a minute, both genders can enjoy this. I think that these shows can help alleviate parents' problems with the whole, no, you can't enjoy this, stay in your lane. I think that these shows kind of alleviate the stigma. And the important thing is also the writing presentation. And Littlest Pet Shop very much has that writing presentation to very much help. And I think with shows like this that do have male characters in a show for girls, I think it's important that there is that nice little gender neutral area that can possibly help parents go, oh, hey, if you want to enjoy Lego Friends, you want to enjoy DC Superhero Girls, go right ahead. I'll watch it with you. And if I enjoy it, hey, we can enjoy this together, have fun getting the products together, no matter the gender. And I think that if there's a little bit more of shows like this, it does definitely alleviate some of those problems and stigmas that are, this is for boys and this is for girls. Blythe Baxter is technically the main character of Littlest Pet Shop, and pretty much she boils down to the sweet girl next door. And I feel like in terms of Littlest Pet Shop's presentation, I feel like in terms of Blythe's character, this very much works. Her attitude and how she interacts with characters, it very much gives the show a nice, comfy feeling. And that's really great about Blythe. She's the more down-to-earth character compared to the Littlest Pet Shop characters that are more on the cartoony side. But Blythe is a really entertaining character, but there's not too much to her character. As the seasons progress, because we're only talking about season 1, as the seasons progress, she starts to grow. Same with the Littlest Pet Shop characters, but they still keep it just to the bare minimum of kind of like a episodic, easy to jump into TV show, which is great, especially for the LPS characters. I feel like I don't need to say anything, so homegirl Zoe Trent, take it away.
I'm gonna tell you about a few things, so just watch me go steal the show, sit on back and try to follow. My name is Zoe Trent, and to the full extent, I'm the big star here. I sing the songs I represent. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Hi, I'm Pepper Clark. Actually, I'm a little bit of a star too. Yeah, actually, a bit more of a comedian.
Pepper here is my good friend. Ask her any knock-knock jokes, cause she's kind of a comedian. And when she's happy, yeah, you can tell. Just stick your nose up and give the room a quick smell.
I think I just smelled
Yeah, that's Vinnie Terry. Oh, I'm a This is soon he'll never, he's a mongoose. He's sort of a magician, but his magic is a bit loose. Sure, he's a little dumb and likes to make a fuss, but we don't mind at all because he's one of us. Littlest pet shop pets, yeah, the littlest. Littlest pet shop pets, we're the littlest.
Littlest.
Pet shop pets, yeah, the littlest.
Littlest.
Littlest pet shop pets.
Sorry, Penny Lane.
Zoe, maybe the song should end soon. We seem to be making quite a mess here.
This is Russell Ferguson. He's a little uptight and wants to get the song done. Penny Ling, are you okay? I think that's everybody, so what do you say?
Russell's voice actor is the same voice actor who does Sonic Underground's Sonic singing voice. It's kind of funny because Russell is a hedgehog. So I watched Littlest Pet Shop when it aired on the Hub Network, and ooh, let me just tell you, this show has bops and it's got bangers. The thing I like about this show is it very much, whatever they want to sing about for the sake of the episode, it is very much a genre piece. So they do whatever genre of music they want and they just knock it out of the park. And rewatching season 1 for this video, I was like, wow, this is definitely a breath of fresh air because Steven Universe is out. Not to mention, Steven Universe was more about a theatrical music than actual mixed genre music. And Ponies is out, and same like Ponies, there are more theatrical type songs and Disney Renaissance feel to it. So those two shows are out, and I can't name you a single show with bops or bangers. And you're gonna say Trolls The Beat Goes On, and yes, you're absolutely right. Trolls The Beat Goes On is the only one that is kind of like Littlest Pet Shop in terms of bops and bangers. Honestly, this is like, for this video and just rewatching Littlest Pet Shop, wow, like, I'm shocked no one really talks about how kind of Phineas and Ferb-esque these songs are, because let me just tell you, if animation Twitter loves Phineas and Ferb bops and bangers, let me just tell you, Littlest Pet Shop has like on par levels of bops and bangers as Phineas and Ferb. Honestly, go give the soundtrack a listen, because you're gonna definitely find some bops and bangers. I will say my favorite song is definitely Humanarian. Go check that out. But honestly, the music of the show, they knock it out of the park and kill it. Now, I've stated this before time and time again. I never grew up with cable. If I did, it'd be VHS tapes, DVDs, or going to a relative's house to watch cable. But I did grow up on ABC's One Saturday Morning, or ABC Kids, known in the early 2000s. And on the top of the screen, there would be an E and I, educational informational, as we talked about in the first part when I brought this topic up. And you might be wondering and questioning, because if you know what ABC Kids is, you're kind of like, wait a minute, last time I checked, The Replacements wasn't an educational or informational show, and you are absolutely correct. That is not an educational show. But when the show doesn't really have like the fun episodes, sometimes there's some sort of moral that the characters learn at the end of the day. Now, since ABC Kids is kind of a defunct thing now, and Replacements is kind of an old show, I think it's best to talk about a more recent Disney Channel show, Big City Greens. Big City Greens is a family sitcom animated show, and episodes are definitely divided into, here, let's have some fun, and then there's episodes where they're like, hey, let's be heartwarming, maybe the characters learn a moral at the end of the day. And when you're watching these shows, you're not really expecting the boom of the moral being in your face. You're too busy laughing and having a good time with these characters. I feel like with educational and informational shows like PBS Kids or other places like that, you're kind of expecting the in your face of the moral, and let's just say, in a sense, no real flavor in terms of presentation that you would find in a Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network show. So at the end of the day, it's pretty basic, and that's not a bad thing by any means, but in terms of talking about slice of life, moral of the day, lesson type shows, it's important to kind of look at that factor. And My Little Pony Friendship is Magic definitely changed the ballpark. And I think the reason as to why that happened is a lot of the staff and crew members, they all worked on cable television shows that were mostly comedies. They didn't really work on projects that were found on PBS Kids or Cubo. So when they got their hands on the smaller audience, moral of the day type of shows, they in a sense kind of made, like a show that had flavor that would be found on Nickelodeon, Disney Channel. You're not really expecting the kind of in-your-face type of presentation or simple and easygoing presentation. And Friendship is Magic does have simple and easygoing presentation, but it's not really the norm in a sense of what you would find on PBS Kids. And I think that's what made Friendship is Magic very much stand out from, as I said, those following networks of how they would present a moral of the day type of show. Littlest Pet Shop is what happened after Friendship is Magic. And because of that, a lot of the crew from Ponies worked on this show. Even the music guy from Ponies did the music that I was saying that had bops and bangers. That guy worked on this too. Not to mention pretty great voice actors and talent in here. And really, just the overall kind of cartoony feel the Pet Shop pets have that kind of really push the comedy. And it's not to say that Blythe and the human characters are not funny, because they're funny too, but I think the Littlest Pet Shop characters are definitely kind of like the standout characters to kind of, especially in the first season, to kind of show that, hey, you can do these nice slice of life stories, but you don't really have to sacrifice being kind of like a Big City Greens type of show where anyone across the board can enjoy it, and it's not really, how should I say this in the nicest possible way, because I think PBS Kids and Cubo television shows are good, but, you know, in a sense, not to be the norm, the kind of basic standard that comes with these shows. In a sense, not boring, because I'm going to be honest here. When people think of PBS Kids or Cubo, they kind of just think of boring. They don't really think of fun as, say, a network like Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. And honestly, this definitely told other toy shows that were aimed at a younger audience that, hey, you don't really have to sacrifice a lot. You could still stay in the realm of being a family-friendly, kid-friendly show that teaches good morals, but you don't have to sacrifice the fun. And that's what really made Littlest Pet Shop stand out from the crowd. Was it was the kind of the show that kind of presented it. Friendship is Magic started it, but in my opinion, Littlest Pet Shop was kind of the one to be like, okay, we're the product right after MLP's success. What are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with this MLP knowledge that we have? And because of that, Littlest Pet Shop is a really, really great toy show. Even if you take away the toy show aesthetic of what the product is, and if Littlest Pet Shop wasn't a toy-based product, it is still a really good moral of the day type of show. And again, the show a lot of the times doesn't have morals and just loves to have fun. And because of that, they had like this really nice balance between the two. And because of that, this show was able to stand out from the crowd and definitely help other toy shows in the future kind of say, hey, you don't have to sacrifice too much. And I love that about it. this aspect isn't about the toys, but Littlest Pet Shop is an ever-changing franchise. The gimmicks keep changing. There's a whole lot of change with the toys, and the show, because of the toys, kind of had to end. The creators and crew wanted to tell more stories and wanted to go on as long as they wanted to, but they couldn't, so they kind of just had to just wrap things up in a nice little bow. But I think the sad part about the show's run was the fact that it came during the MLP era, and it came at a weird time in ponies. It came at the peak of when Alicorn Twilight Sparkle was going to be introduced, around the time Equestria Girls was being introduced, and around the time the My Little Pony fandom bubble was bursting slowly and surely. And because of that, MLP fans were not really nice towards Littlest Pet Shop, if I'm being really honest, being a person who was around the era of this happening. And due to that, Littlest Pet Shop never really got to garner an audience that I think it would have. But I think the part of the problem was definitely the MLP fandom pretty much saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if there were more MLP type shows, and never really search for them or even remotely want to talk about them. And Littlest Pet Shop was definitely one of them, and it kind of just started a snowball effect of a lot of toy shows just really being slept on, or if your DreamWorks Trolls case, being incredibly controversial. But, you know, when we look at the Pony Life situation, I recommend watching my video. A lot of MLP fans are just like, this is new, this is different, this isn't FIM, even though FIM ended. I don't like this change. Man, they certainly don't make FIM type shows anymore, and it's like, okay, well, you had a chance when Littlest Pet Shop came out, and there's a whole bunch of chances right now as I'm recording this video, and I'm going to be talking about another one in the series. So, really honestly, I'm going to be honest. When you see a toy show that has kind of like that presentation that's like really, really good, trying to be broad in terms of its audience, and if it's got bops and bangers, definitely promote those bops and bangers. But if it doesn't have bops and bangers, I definitely recommend discussing these shows. Make sure they're not slept on, because you never know what's gonna happen. And honestly, that's all I have to really say in this part of the video is, if you see a toy show you like, talk about it. Don't be too afraid of this isn't the norm. Break out of the norm. Talk about them. Have fun. And that was part of this, in terms of episode 1 here. I had a blast going back to season 1 of Littlest Pet Shop, and I cannot wait to talk about the more shows coming up soon. Anyway, I'm Speed Force Spectre, and I'm signing out.
Down, take a look at a boy like me. Never stood on my own 2 feet. Now I'm blue as I can be. Oh, love, come get me down. You look so cool, 'cause that's the only thing that I learned at school. I said that's the only thing that I learned at school. Sing it! Too high, that's gonna get you down. Second too high, that's gonna get you down. It's not about who you are, but your friends are God. You only have who you're with. Popular, I know I'm popular, and all that you have to do is be true to you. Find that it's you. Mama told me what I should know. Too much candy gonna rot your soul. If she loves you, let her go, 'cause love only gets you down.
Shawn Mendes?